counsel on that. Otherwise, I want to kind of get into where we're at right now and what we're working on. As you guys know, we completed the forensic accounting last year, and since then we started the claims process. We have received all the claims that we were going to receive before the deadline, and we anticipate filing the claims motion with the court sometime in the next, sometime before the end of next week. That motion, of course, will state, the way that we believe that the claim should be treated, and any investors or any claimants that object to the treatment of their claim will have an opportunity to do so during that time. And then immediately after the court approves those claims, our intention is to file the distribution motion so that the court can allow the distribution to occur, and we can send out the first set of payments based on the funds that are available at that time. So that's kind of the shortened timeline of where we are in regards to that specific piece, which I'm sure everybody is wanting to know about, and wanting to know about getting paid. And so our goal is to try to get that done as quickly as possible. We did end up with a few claims that took a little bit of extra time to deal with, but now we think they're in a position to where the court can adjudicate everything reasonably and quickly, and we should be able to get payment out as soon as possible. So I'm going to go into now some of the general questions that we've been asked by investors to answer. It says, can you post regular updates of recovery activities for investors to review and comment online? The website is not set up to allow comments. However, if you do have comments that you would like to send to us, that can be done through the through the email, you can reach out to us via phone call, or of course you're welcome to to specifically send us an email about what questions you might have or specific assets you might have. Anna just posted that information in the group chat for everyone, but of course that information remains the same from the last time we spoke. Next question is, can you please review why you are being paid out of the pool of funds that are coming back to us? Why are you being paid before us? So the professionals in the case do have to apply to the court for payment. The rules that are set forth by the Securities and Exchange Commission say that we file our fee applications on a quarterly basis. Those then get reviewed by the court and all the parties, and then the court, based on whether or not there's an objection or if the court has questions, will then rule on them. They do so because in order for us to continue to do the work that we're doing, we have to, of course, be paid for our work as well as the employees that we paid in order to do this work. Of course, we are very careful with what it is that we spend and how we spend the money. We do know that this is investor money, but without us being here, of course, there'd be no one party to collect these funds, to file the lawsuits, and to deal with these issues. And so then the funds that would be available at that point would then be ate up by all the administrative expenses of hiring 50 different lawyers or 500 different lawyers, based on how many investors there are on the case and how they do that. So it's a lot simpler, it's quicker, and it's far less expensive to have one person who's in charge of everything and does everything on behalf of everyone involved in the case. My address has changed. How do I submit my new address? It's very simple. You can do so via email, or you can call us and give us that new information. I do recommend, of course, if anything has changed, you'll let us know, because there will be a distribution coming here very soon. And so we want to make sure that we know where you're at. So when we mail those funds out, that you get them the first time and we don't have to stop payment or reissue checks. It's much quicker to get it done the first time. And I would not rely upon the Postal Service. If you have forwarding address in place, I would not rely on that to make sure that you get your payment. So I would, again, make sure you get us that information as soon as you can. How much longer will it take to finish the case? So there are some pieces of this case that are probably going to take a little bit longer than others. The litigation against Bank of America, against the other professionals in this case, may take a little bit. But of course, our goal is to pay out the vast majority of the money that we have available, and then we will continue to work on collecting additional assets through that litigation, and we'll get those paid. We've had some success in settling some claims against some of the credit card companies, as well as against some promoters and former employees in the case. And those funds continue to come in on a regular basis, and that information is available in the quarterly report that we file with the court. In the accounting section, it talks about monies that have come in and where they've come from. So that information is all available. When are we going to get our investment back? You're going to get it back starting with the distribution process. So again, the court's got to adjudicate the claims motion, and once they do, we will file our distribution plan right on top of that. And then once the court approves that, then we can do the first distribution. where's the money that I invested currently? Well, some percentage of that money it has been collected by us through the various different sale of assets as well as litigation against some third parties. And so some of that money is sitting in a insured bank account, waiting on the court to authorize distribution, at which time we will then distribute those funds. Which address should I contact if I have questions? That answer is our mailing address, which is the PO Box 4364, and that information is in the chat. People have some specific questions about defendants and other parties in the case, whether or not that they are going to be indicted or whether or not that they are going to be sued. I can't get into the specific questions about every individual person, but I can tell you that if they were a promoter of the scheme, that we have initiated at least first stages of what would be litigation against them to request that that money be returned. And then if we don't get cooperation voluntarily, then we will be litigating or filing lawsuits against those people to get that money returned. You can't have commissions and you can't have profits in a case where there was no legitimate business operations. So those would be, false profits and fake commissions because there was no actual product being sold. As far as questions of indictments or who's going to jail or what kind of penalties there are, that the criminal side of that is outside of the scope of what we work on. We work on the civil side of this. We are appointed in the civil case. As to whether or not the Department of Justice will be indicting any of the defendants in the case is completely up to them, and we obviously have no say in it. We will provide information if they subpoena us, and we are happy to help out in any way we can. But that is outside of our scope or our realm, and so that we don't have any further information on that's public at this time. Assets. Can I see a list of unsold assets and prices? Right now, we only have two currently unsold assets. Those are two pieces of real property that are in Searchlight, Nevada. If you'd like information on those, we can. If you email us, I'm happy to send that to you. If you're interested in purchasing them, I would love to sell them to you. As you might guess, the property in Searchlight, Nevada is not really hot property, as we might say. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but we have been successful in selling up a number of the parcels there, and we'll continue to do so. Like I said, we're down to two pieces at this point. Claims. How do we know if we're still part of the lawsuit? So if you filed a claim with us, then you've spoken to somebody from my team or received a letter from my team stating how we would anticipate dealing with your claim, whether it's approved in full, approved in part, or if it's being objected to. If you have questions specifically about that, I would recommend that you reach back out to whoever you've talked to in the past, or if you can't figure out who that is, to just email us generally and ask that question. But again, we have been in communication with everybody involved in the case. And so if you have questions about your treatment, please do not hesitate to ask if you have any questions on that. We will, like I said, we will be filing in the next week to 2 weeks the claims motion with the court, telling the court how we think that the claim should be treated. And ultimately, that treatment is up to the court, including a couple late filed claims. Whether or not they will be approved or not is ultimately up to the court. We have recommended that they not be approved because the claims process says that they should not be approved based on the rules. But ultimately, that's up to the judge to decide based on the extenuating factors of each of those claims. Next question is, I invested through a name I'm not familiar with here, and directly with Profit Connect. Receiver staff told me that only the direct Profit Connect investment is recorded. How do I get back money that invested through a third party? If we don't have evidence that that you have invested through a third party, we would ask that you help communicate with us about that and help us understand what that looks like. If that money did go to a third party and that third party invested the money either individually on your behalf or on the behalf of you and other investors, we would like to know that. Because we would make sure that those claims ultimately end up in the hands of the person who transmitted or who the money belonged to ultimately. So if you think that you fall into that case and you have information about that, please do reach out to us and talk to us about that. It says, next question, we've submitted our claims, but the last we were told is if you do not hear from us that there's no issue with your claim. Many of us want formal confirmation that you indeed have our claim and that further confirmation regarding the associated amount of the claim. Is there a process in place to accomplish both of these key requests? Yes, so if you have not heard from us about your claim, the chances are that means your claim has been approved in full. If you have questions, you can email us, and we're happy to respond to those with that information. We just need to make sure to verify that it is you that's sending the request. The other thing is when we file the information with the court, you will get there will be a list of all the claims and how we propose to treat them, and they'll be listed by their claim number, which you should have already, because when you filed your claim, you were given that number. And so then you can also check that document to ensure that you understand the way that your claim is being treated. But again, if you have questions, please do reach out to us. We're happy to answer those questions. Is the percentage we're getting back becoming more realistic as we get closer to receiving the funds? So the interim distribution amount is still yet to be 100% decided, because we have to get a better understanding of what our tax liability is, which we are working on concurrently with everything else that we're doing. And then once that decision is made, it will then become part of that distribution plan. We'll tell the court how much we propose distributing, and which of course will be the vast majority of all the funds that are available. But there will be further recoveries. We continue to get payments from, like I said, third parties that we're settling with, including some credit card companies, and then we have litigation against banks and also professionals. And so that number will continue to increase as we go forward. Will folks that invested just $1,000 be at the bottom of the list for refunds? No, typically claimants are all treated the same regardless of the amount of money that they put into the case. The amount of your claim is based on the money you put in minus the money that you got out. And in a distribution plan is typically done as a pro rata plan, meaning everybody will get the same percentage of their claim. Now that ultimately could change as we get into the distribution plan and ultimately decide that that would not be the fairest way to do it. But outside of that, that is typically the way it's done, and the way that would be submitted to the court for approval. Ultimately, it is, of course, up to the court to decide how that distribution process will play out. When will we start to see payments from the recovered funds? So what we're going to do is we're about to file that claims motion. Once the court approves it, we'll then file the distribution motion and wait for the court on that. Once that distribution motion is approved, then typically we can get out payments within 7 to 14 days of that time period. How will our investments be sent back to us? Usually we send them out via check. We will look at the available options as we get a little bit closer to determine if there's a better way to do it. But typically it is done via check. Will I be able to get my money back? That's based on the claims process. You will need to file the claim prior to the deadline. Based on the numbers that we received, I think we received in excess of 95 to 97% of all the claims that we expected to see that we got. So we think that the vast majority, filed claims that needed to have filed claims. Has the settlement date for disbursements moved back? No, that date is based on court approval. Like I said, we have to get approval of the claims motion, then we have to get approval of the distribution motion. And once those two things happen, then we can start the distribution process. How much of a percentage will we be getting back, and has this number changed? That number will continue to change as we collect more information and as we collect more settlements from the parties. So that number will continue to go up from where it is today. If you look at the total amount of cash we have divided by the total amount of claims we have right now, we have about $9.5 million in cash currently, and then we have about $23 million in claims. So that gives you an idea of where we're currently at. But we do anticipate that there might be some other large payments out there, including some of the litigation against some of the banks that are involved in this case and some of the other professionals involved. How often are distributions made? Distributions are going to be made whenever there's a sum of money that warrants doing a distribution. So obviously, initially, once the distribution motion is approved, we will do a distribution at that point. And then every time we collect a sizable enough amount of money to where it justifies doing a distribution, we will do a distribution at that point. It's not uncommon to do 2, 3, or even 4 distributions in one case. If there's a second distribution, will it be a much smaller amount? And what will the timing be? The amount of that second distribution is going to be based on the amount of money we collect on this third-party litigation. We don't yet know what the claim against Bank of America will bring. We don't yet know what the claim against other professionals will bring. So it's possible that it will be less than the first one, but it could also potentially be more than that. The question is how many distributions will be made. I think we talked about that. The timing, they will not be made monthly, but they will perhaps be made, every 6 to 12 months, depending on the amount of cash again that's accumulated. If we do a big settlement against one of the parties and we've accumulated that cash, then it's likely that we will do distribution at that point. The nice thing is once we do a first distribution and the plan's been approved by the court, we don't have to get supplemental approval to do a second, third, or fourth distribution. So once we collect enough money to make it justifiable in doing that, we will just do a distribution. We don't have to wait on the court anymore. After the distributions are made, will there still be unresolved items such as property owned or lawsuits? Yes, after the first distribution, there will be. It's likely that we will get most of that resolved or all that resolved in the receivership. If we think that there's something outstanding that's going to take an extended period of time, we can also set up a special litigation trust that essentially would then start doing payouts when those long-term issues get resolved, and then that would automatically do a payout to investors based on that. Let's see. Would you really withhold first payment to investors if there were a dispute with only one or two investors? So when the distribution happens is ultimately up to the court. We don't decide, any slowdown in that process. We do have a few investors that we've requested some information for that we need in order to be able to make that. For example, we need to have people's tax ID numbers or social security numbers in order to do a distribution in case we're ever asked that information by the Internal Revenue Service. If they have not provided that information, then their claim will be put on a hold status, which means that we will withhold the amount of money that they were to get paid, but they will not be getting a check until we get that information because it's required for us to have it by law. It doesn't mean that they're not getting their claim. It just means that they're not going to get paid until they provide it. And that will not hold up everybody else's distribution. Now, it's possible that when we file the claims motion that somebody objects and the court wants to hold a hearing, and that could slow down the process. But we don't anticipate any major slowdowns. In this case, we've worked with claimants for an extended period of time to ensure that there weren't any known major issues that would slow down the process moving forward. If we do end up in a situation where the investors, where there is a true question on an investor's claim, we could always withhold that amount of money from the distribution and then distribute everything else from that. And then if it's ultimately determined that that person wasn't entitled to that claim, then that money would then be distributed out as part of a second distribution. Next question, what would be the minimum dollar that we would receive back? There is no minimum dollar amount. We do it, like I said, on a pro rata basis, given the amount of money to be distributed, there is not going to be any, $1 checks going out. Obviously the check's got to at least be worth the amount of money that it would cost to mail it. Otherwise it's probably not worth doing it. So usually we set some minimum amount, and it might be $5 that, anything under $5 just won't go out because it just is not worth mailing it once you add in the cost of doing so. But really there is no, minimums for all intents and purposes. Can we give an estimated date for an initial distribution? Well, like I said, we anticipate filing that claims motion in 2 weeks. Typically, the court in somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks will hear that and approve it. And then, then we will be filing our distribution plan on top of it. Depending on how long that takes, the distribution plan may get filed before the claims motion is approved. But then again, it could take 3 to 6 weeks, for that distribution motion to get approved, depending on if there's any objections to it. Again, we've tried to work through any issues that we know that are outstanding to make sure that there would be a limited or not, no objections to anything that we filed in this case. Will we have a net profit from the distributions? At this point, there is not enough money to put anybody in a position where they're going to get paid more than 100% of their initial investment. If we do succeed in the litigation and manage to collect more than 100%, then we would then propose, a distribution plan to the court that would go above and beyond that. But I don't want to set expectations up that is not that's going to happen, because it would be very rare situation in which we're able to collect 100% of that money back, because money gets spent in ways that is non-collectible. Gets spent on vacations and weddings and things like that. That there just is no asset to go after, and so some of that money may not be recovered. Next question is there any chance that someone who invested $1,000 will see any money? And if so, how much? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter the amount you invested. It could be $100, it could be $1,000, it could be 10,000, it could even be $1 million. The process is the same for everyone. The payout is what changes because it's on a pro rata basis. So it's, let's just say that, the first distribution was 20% of your claim. You're going to get 20% of $1,000. You're going to get 20% of $10,000, depending on what that claim amount is. Now, that's just a hypothetical example. That isn't the amount that we intend to distribute. And, like I said, we will figure that out as we get closer to it and we get a better idea of what any potential tax liability is. Do you anticipate recovering any more funds? We do. In fact, we actually will be recovering in the next few days. We should be getting a payment from one of the credit card companies that we settled with. That is, I believe, is $400,000. So that'll be coming in, and there's some other settlements with some other financial institutions, plus the litigation against Bank of America and some of the other third-party professionals in this case. So we do anticipate that those will continue to bring in more funds and hopefully significant amount of additional funds. But of course, there's still quite a bit to be litigated before we get to that point. So those are all the questions that we received via email prior to. Looks like that there's been some questions coming in just about, and generally it looks like most of them have been answered, but there was a question specifically, how is our tax liability if there was no profit for the company? So tax liability is going to be based on how things were filed with the company. And we just need to go back and ensure that what the company didn't create a tax liability. Now, given the losses, it's likely that there would be no tax liability. But of course, we have to verify that before we can just say, okay, everything's fine, we're just going to pay it out. So we have to make sure that the IRS agrees, especially since we're going to be going back and changing previous filings to record things as they actually happened and not as, the scheme said that they happened, right? Because they said they were making tons of money. And of course they weren't. So we just need to make sure that the IRS agrees that when we refile those tax returns to show that in fact we weren't making money, that the IRS agrees with that. Next question has to do with the case against Bank of America. Can you petition that your costs are included and your costs not paid by the investors? Whenever we go after a third party, we always seek to try to get as much money back as possible, whether it be the lost profits of investors, it could be litigation costs, it could be punitive damages based on the facts of each case. So we will try to get back as much money as possible based on the facts of the case. And some cases are better than others, some facts are better than others. But we will work with the facts that we have. And like I said, we've already hired third-party litigation counsel to go after Bank of America. It's a firm that I've used in the past that have been successful in very large settlements with banks. But it is fact dependent based on the facts of this specific case, and we do anticipate that there is an avenue for recovery there. Otherwise, we would not have filed this case. We are very careful with the filings that we do and how much money we spend on going after anything, because if we can't recover enough to justify doing it, then we're not going to do it. I'm not going to go out and risk $100,000 to recover $100,000, right? Because that's not a very good investment because there's risk. So we want to make sure that when we do go after these, that we go after them for the maximum value. And that's also why we hire contingency counsel on some of these, because then if they don't win, there's no cost to the estate. But we do think that this is a good case. We do think it's a winnable case, and we have high hopes that we will recover additional funds for investors from that case. So that is all the questions that have come in that we see. Again, we will be doing another one of these calls in approximately 90 days. And so when we do that, please do, when you get the email, if you have questions, send them out to us. But in the interim, if you have questions, do reach out to us. The email is contact@profitconnect-receivership.com. Again, that's contact@profitconnect-receivership.com. Or you can call area code 503-980-3711. Again, 503-980-3711. And if you have questions or if you want to review any of the pleadings or any of the other things that have happened in the case, you can go to the website, which is profitconnect-receivership.com. Again, that's profitconnect-receivership.com. And all the questions can be answered there for you. And that information is in the chat. It was just posted by one of my staff members, Anna. So that information is there. I do recommend that you reach out if you do have any specific questions, but otherwise you can anticipate that you'll see that claims motion being filed in the next 2 weeks. And then once the court adjudicates that, you'll see a distribution motion being filed right on top of it. The hope is to get money into your hands as quickly as we can. Some of that timing is a little bit outside of our control, but we're going to do what we can to make sure it gets done. Like I said, we've already tried to overcome any objections that we know of in order to make sure that it becomes as smooth as possible so that there aren't any holdups on your money, getting your money back. But I appreciate you guys joining for the call, and please do reach out to us if you have any specific questions. Thank you.